Welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, the long season. Well, here's our current situation as seen from the tracking center. And you can see by all these lines and whatnot here that in spite of what I was thinking after an episode or two back that I removed RemoteTech, I have gone ahead and re-enabled it. Now, I never did remove the mod itself, all the parts and everything, because I had ships up with those parts and so on. So what I had done was remove the DLL. And then, after the last episode, I was getting ready to do something about these polar orbit contracts that you see here in the green orbits. And so I was working on that in a test save. And I had the worst problem in the world. No ship that I had would get this first part of a contract checked off with a green check mark indicating that it was satisfied. And that's because it was not recognizing the antenna. It didn't matter what antenna I put on there, it wasn't recognizing it. And this drove me nuts for 2 or 3 days. And finally, after a lot of checking all sorts of possibilities, it finally dawned on me. The RemoteTech Module Manager configs were all still in place. And I looked at those configs, and what they do is they disable the default stock transmitter flags, and instead redirect it over to a RemoteTech module. Of course, that module was not available because I had removed the DLL. I put the DLL back, and all of a sudden, everything worked. And my satellite network, I'd never removed it. I didn't delete the ships and whatnot, because I did maintain the part files. And now you notice that CommSat 4, that was the problem one before. I had put it up, and I had antennas set and activated, but something wasn't quite right, and in any event, the thing ran out of power because it was spent too much time in the shadow of Kerbal, with Kerbal blocking the sun, and it couldn't recharge. Well, time has passed since then, and that satellite can now see the sun, which means it's getting a battery charge. And as you can see from the orange lines here, we have connectivity from mission control out here to CommSat 1. CommSat 1 hooks up to 2 and 3. 2 and 3 both hook up to 4, and everything's golden. Everything works. So, now I'm going to go ahead and do these 2 polar orbit contracts. And in those polar orbits, the satellite placed is going to be festooned with RemoteTech antennas. So let's have a look over at the VAB. All right, I give you the PolarSat 2B. Now, this is a slightly modified Mycroft launcher. And inside the fairing, we have a really good communication satellite. This thing is peppered with solar panels. There are 64 OX-STAT solar panels. That's probably too much, but I don't care. We have 8 of these KWBXL battery banks that hold 300 charge piece. There are 4 of the stock Z100 battery banks. It has RCS. There are 8 250-liter RCS tanks. Again, probably more than it needs, but that's all right. And on top, we have 5 of the RemoteTech Reflectron KR7 dish antennas. And let's see. These are the ones that, if I look it up over here, yeah, here it is. It has a range of 90 million meters, so that's going to be 90,000 kilometer range. Great. Now with 5 of those, we can hook up to our comm network. We've got the DP10 for, let's see, that one's got a 500 kilometer range. That's for connection to mission control right around launch. This thing is going to be the high orbit satellite, and I'm going to be launching 2 of these in pretty quick succession, and we're going to build up a satellite network and fulfill a couple of contracts. See here, I'm looking at my active contracts, and the 2 polar satellite contracts right here. This one from Floyd Dynamics, and let's see, it's going to pay $66,000 on completion, plus a little bit of science and rep. And this other one is going to pay about the same. They both gave advances and so on. So it's going to probably cost a little bit to get it done, but that's okay. And once these 2 are done, there will probably be more. And of course there is also mobile refinery in flight over Kerbal. I think I can pretty much manage that. And then there's the science lab orbiting. I know I can do that one. And we'll get to these visual surveys of the moon. No worries there. Meanwhile, we're off to the launch pad. Okay, here we are. Just getting ready to set this up. I do want to set a couple of things in here first. And it's kind of difficult to see what I'm doing here. Okay. No, I didn't want to click on the fairing. I didn't want to click on the battery bank. Oh, that's right. The Reflectron DP10 is an Omni. All right. So I'm going to... This one dish, I'm going to target CommSat 1 with that one and activate it. And then this one here, we'll target CommSat 2 and activate that. Get this one set over here, if I can click on it, to CommSat 3 and activate. And if I can possibly get a view of it that will let me, this one targets CommSat 4, activate that. And then this last one, that one will target the active vessel and activate that. All right. We can close this up. And we have plenty of battery power on this thing. And once the fairing is released, we'll see the thing will be able to see better than that. All right. Now, everything's ready here. Let's bring up Smart ASS for attitude control. Set this up. We're launching polar orbit, and I believe we're going to be launching south. And now let's figure out when we need to launch. The red dot is mission control, of course. And this orbit here is the one I'm aiming for first. I think we need to time warp forward a little bit. So that mission control is more or less directly beneath the planned orbit. Yeah, this looks good. All right. All right, we're all set and ready to go. Let's rock. What the heck is that? I have stage lock for some reason. Let's see, Alt L. Oh, crap. Hang on, maybe I can fix this. Time control. I had set a keybind. I figured out how to do it. I asked on the forums. And this little question mark here brings up the time control setting. And I had set my custom thing to L, which is also Alt L affects the staging control, the stage lock. So let's change that. Okay, let's put it on the multiply key on the keypad. All right. Now, can we Alt L and unlock the staging? No, apparently we cannot. I will be back when I figure this out. All right, I think it's ready to go. Apparently there's some kind of a weird bug going on here. Let's give it a try. Okay, stage light shows purple, as in locked, yet I was able to launch. All right. I don't know the reason for that, but it's fine now. It was not able to launch when I tried originally. In any event, we're going to proceed in a south launch, and that means we get right about to 2 kilometers. I'm going to execute this attitude change. That's good. And we'll turn to the south and begin to pitch. It's a little wobbly, but it gets better once we get into this next stage. Okay, throttle to max, and let us pitch, or start pitching, down to 65. My apologies for there not being much to see because it's a night launch, but that is kind of mandatory according to where the satellite, where the required orbit is. Things will brighten up a little bit once we get out into space. All right, let's pitch down a bit to 50. And that rotational wobble will sort itself out shortly. One thing I did have to do to this design was on the side over here I've got an antenna, this reflectron thing, which in retrospect is probably not enough of an antenna. I had a comms DTS M1 on there, but for some reason one of these mods has done the strangest thing in the world, requiring that antenna to have punched cards in order to operate. I have no idea what the heck that is all about, but obviously I don't have any. The main reason for an antenna here is the same reason as there is an octoprobe core on there, is because I want to make sure this upper stage gets returned out of orbit. Okay, pitch down to about 20. And we'll stay that way for the rest of the flight. Actually, I need to pitch back up to 30. And we'll stay there. Because looking at this orbit, that orbit right there, no, this one, yeah. We need to get this thing out to about 6,000 kilometers before we set up the rest of the orbit. so there's no point in pitching down to the horizon because we're not going for a low orbit at all. I've decided to skip that phase. Alright, next stage coming up, and we'll lose the fairings at the same time. Stage light is still purple. I don't know what the heck that's all about. Nice clean separation. Here's our ginormous freaking satellite with way too much RCS and way too much satellite OX stat panels, but hey, I'm not complaining. I think it looks cool. And more importantly, it will work. Okay, inclination is coming up to 86 degrees and increasing. We want it at 90. And apoapsis, in the interim, we want 6,400. I'd say about 6,300. Right in there for the interim orbit. There will be a little bit of plane change and orbit matching to do to match the contract requirements. But we have matched the launch a new unmanned probe part of the contract, which was something I was not able to do in my testing until I figured out that bit about the RemoteTech on the antennas. Alright, we're gaining some altitude pretty quickly. Yeah, very good. And I better do something about antennas. We'll target this one to CommSat 1 and activate it. That's on mission control. Let's put this one on. Oh, that one is on CommSat 1. Ah, this one. CommSat 2. Activate. Okay. Activate this one, put it on active vessel, and we fix the rest of the antennas later. We're getting up there quite a ways. Yeah, it now has connections to at least 2 satellites plus mission control, so we're good. Apoapsis reaching 3,000. I'm going to leave a little bit of fuel in this thing. Not very much. Well, its periapsis is 19 kilometers, so it'll fall back. All right. So burn the last of its fuel. (28, 29, 29.9 kilometers), it will fall back. Whoa. That went way too high. Way too high. All right. Turn retrograde and let's fix that. And this thing turns slowly because, oh heck, I thought I had a reaction wheel on this. This must have been one of my other test designs that had the reaction wheels. So it's only got the torque force of that little octo probe, which isn't much. Fortunately, it shouldn't take much fuel at all to bring that apoapsis back down. I didn't pay attention to that when I was so overly unnecessarily concerned with a stage I was going to get rid of. Ridiculous, I know. Alright, come on. RCS to help it along. Alright, we're good. Apparently they didn't need the RCS. And now we'll waste some fuel correcting a mistake. Bring the apoapsis back down to 6,400. That's good. All right. Now, first correction is a maneuver at apoapsis. And we need to bring the periapsis out here to about 6,200 or so. And let's use a little bit of radial to move where the periapsis is in the orbit so that it's where the specification says it needs to be. Alright, it's 64 by 59. That's close enough, I think. And for this one, I'm going to use the RemoteTech flight computer. We'll have it hold maneuver prograde and execute the planned maneuver. And that's in 3 hours and 21 minutes. We'll be time accelerating, of course. Once this orbit is out here like this, I'll come up here to the ascending node to a place on this orbit that is close to that, and then do a plane change to get it lined up. Alright, a bit of time warp. The flight computer will kick it out when it needs to. See how we have connections here. Let's see, I can turn that part of that off. Clean that up a little bit. Okay, here we go. First circularization burn. Physics time warp to help that along. How's our fuel? Doing okay. The nice thing about this satellite is that it's got so freaking much RCS that can make up for a shortfall in fuel. All right, excellent. Kill that maneuver. Now we need one out here matching the ascending node. And it needs a little bit of normal, anti-normal to bring it into line. The hard part is lining the orbit up like that. That can get kind of tricky. But once you do, It's real easy to use that as a guide for lining up where the plane change needs to go. Okay, flight computer, node, execute, make sure it's out there. Okay. All right, how much delta V do we have left? It has 64, we need 81, so we'll be finishing this burn and the rest of the maneuvers using RCS thrusters. And almost in position. And time warp. I have to make sure that before I leave this ship that it has active connections to all the satellites and so on. Alright. Backing this off. Alright, good. Burning. And that's it for our fuel. RCS enabled, and fire the RCS jets. To complete the burn. All right. Perfect. All right. Don't need that anymore. Our inclination is 90.101. Excellent. Next maneuver, right here at periapsis. And I want to use a little bit of radial to move the periapsis a little bit. About like that. And then some prograde to put the apoapsis out here at, where does it need to be? 7031. 7032. That should be close enough. And that's the right location on the orbit as well. Let's take off just a little bit of the prograde. All right. Excellent. That will work. Okay, maneuver prograde, execute plan, burn. All right. Looking good. Once I get this one in position, I'll be launching another one for this orbit. And that one, I'm just going to use time acceleration and cuts because it's going to be pretty much the same routine as this one, only on a different orbit. Time warping to burn time. RCS enabled, fire thrusters, and we're using RCS to complete this. All right. Apoapsis moving right out to where it needs to be. Okay, last maneuver at apoapsis, and put the periapsis at 6520. Perfect. Okay. Node, execute. All right. Time warp a day and 3 hours. And of course, RemoteTech's flight computer is complaining no engine to carry out the maneuver. Yes, we do. They just happen to be thruster engines, is all. Maneuvering thrusters. Usually used exclusively for attitude control. All right. $65.21, and this contract is completed. Okay, great. Now I'm going to head back down to the Space Center after I make sure that all my antennas are properly set. Yeah, let's do it from here. Okay, this one has no target. We got CommSat 1, Mission Control, CommSat 2. All right, CommSat 1, CommSat 2, CommSat 3, active vessel, and this one at CommSat 4. And now go to the ship and activate the one disabled antenna. This one. Now it's got hot connections everywhere. All right. Now for launching the second flight.